Welcome to Your True Calling. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Dr. Michelle Chappell, a psychologist and a rock star. I've helped thousands of people find their true purpose by discovering their one-of-a-kind superpowers. Each week, I'll share tools and client success stories to help you find gifts you don't know you have so that you can thrive in a career that fills your soul and passion projects that make you feel whole. Hello, dear listeners. I am so excited to talk to Kay Kostopoulos today. This fabulously successful woman grew up in a working class family and became a triple threat singer, dancer, and actor, and beloved teacher at Stanford University, where I met her. She's taught acting and communication skills to theater people in the drama department, business professionals in the Graduate School of Business, and doctors in the School of Medicine at Stanford for 25 years, and she's been featured in O Magazine. Today, Kay and I talk about her transformational journey and the power of listening to others and creating your own work to find confidence and success in life. Let's get into it. Hi, Kay. I'm so glad you're here on my podcast today.
I'm so glad to be with you, Michelle. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, gosh, thanks for being here. You're one of my favorite people.
Same here. Back at you.
I know you from taking your amazing acting classes at Stanford. Loved
Right.
them so much.
Thanks. I've formally retired from my full-time teaching, but I still go back there all the time. In fact, I'm doing a workshop on Wednesday for the business school down there. So they bring me into town all the time to teach.
Oh, that's really cool. It's fascinating to me that you teach acting and communication skills, not just to theater people, but to business professionals and to doctors. So, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's been my mission, since beginning teaching, is to bring the arts and to utilize the arts to share with the non-artist. My acting classes at Stanford were always full of business people, doctors, engineers, just about every education majors all over the campus would come to acting. And then eventually I started teaching in all those departments and creating communication workshops with them.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I'm going to dig in more with that. But I also want to mention, just in the beginning of this, that you lead an amazing jazz band, which I have heard many times, Black Olive Jazz.
That's
And
right.
you've been written up in O Magazine. And so I thought you would be perfect for this podcast because you have a lot of gifts and you have a lot of callings, and you also kind of mix them together in some interesting ways.
Mhm.
And the purpose of this podcast actually is to help people find gifts that they don't know that they have. I work with a lot of people that don't know their gifts, or they may know what they are, but they don't have the confidence to act on them.
Mhm.
So I've found that when I interview people about how they found their gifts, a little bit of life story, and how it led to a calling, or two or three in your case, it helps. It's sort of like clues for the listeners about, oh, that kind of, I resonate with that. So I thought I
Right.
would dig into two or three of your different gifts and just sort of ask you some questions about how you discovered them.
That's perfect. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. So let's start with acting. How
Mhm.
old were you when you first realized that you were drawn to acting or that you were good at acting? When did it get your attention?
Well, when I was a little girl, I mean, I used to perform for my family all the time. Come from a Greek family, and we always would sing together. And, I was, their source of entertainment many times when I was a kid. And my dad really pushed me to perform a lot. He wanted me to be the next Shirley Temple. I have videos of myself performing when I was a little girl. But I guess formally, when I was in high school, I was drawn to theater, and I had a great high school acting teacher. His name was John Gross. I grew up in Baltimore. I'm very blue collar, working class person. I was not steeped in the arts, and it wasn't like I came from a Shakespearean family or anything. But they were so supportive and so full of love. My family was absolutely wonderful, and they always believed in me, which gave me a lot of self-confidence. So I took a lot of I performed in a lot of shows when I was in high school, and then interestingly enough, when I got into college, I just wanted to get a formal education. I wanted to be a scholar. So I didn't act all the way through college. I became much more interested in English. I was an English major, English literature, but I was a dance minor. So I did do modern dance at university, which was my hometown. I couldn't afford to go to an expensive school. I went to my first I went to community college, by the way, for all you folks, who think that, oh, I've got to go to an Ivy League school. No, you don't. No, you don't. I went to a great community college in Baltimore, and I got scholarships there because I studied so hard. I wanted to be, smart. I wanted to learn things. And then I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Again, I didn't live on campus. I couldn't afford such a thing. So, and I worked the whole time I was in school, the entire time. I never took any time off. And then when I graduated, I really didn't know what to do after then because, I had this degree in English and didn't know where to take that. And but I took my dance minor and I taught modern dance for a while. And then while I was dancing, I returned, more to my ethnic roots, my Greek roots. And I started doing a lot of Greek folk dancing. And then I became a belly dancer. And I belly danced for about 15, 18 years professionally. I traveled all over the States. I lived in Hawaii for 2 years. I danced in beautiful, beautiful, classy Greek, Arabic, Persian nightclubs all over the place. And I kept with that for quite a while. Lived in Hawaii, as I said, for 2 years and danced in a beautiful nightclub there called the Marrakesh. And at the same time, I still, and that was wonderful performing. There are a lot of videos of me belly dancing, which is pretty funny, pretty cute. I was very young. I did a film, a documentary about belly dancing that you can also find online too. It's called Classic Stars of Belly Dance. And I moved to San Francisco and I kept working here as a dancer. And then when I decided to go back to acting, I auditioned for American Conservatory Theater, ACT, in San Francisco. And the first time I didn't get in, again, to encourage, your listeners, it doesn't always happen the first time. Try again. Absolutely. So I went back, I auditioned again, and this was years later. And this time I got in.
Good. That is good for people to hear. I also, just to interject a little,
Yes, please.
I was on the waiting list to get into Princeton, so I didn't get into Princeton right away either. And I didn't know
Oh,
whether I would. So, you reach these so-called lofty goals, but it's not always a straight line. It takes some time.
Oh,
And
that's so true, Michelle. That's so true. It's never a straight line.
yeah,
Never a straight line, rarely. And so I got my master's degree from ACT. I did a show which I wrote myself about Maria Callas. This was years before Masterclass came out, that wonderful show about Maria Callas. And I wrote the show because, my philosophy has always been don't wait for the phone to ring, make your own work. And that's the other thing I recommend to your listeners. You can create, you can do your own creations. And I know, Michelle, you've done that too. I so admire your work as well. And how you've just, created this wonderful persona, and now you're doing podcasts, and you're a wonderful singer and performer in your own right. So we just keep expanding, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I went to, then I moved back to New York. I moved to New York. I met my husband in school and we moved to New York City, and I danced a lot. I performed in New York City. And again, I wrote my master's thesis there. I performed the thesis and got my master's degree. I performed it in New York and San Francisco, my show about Maria Callas. And then, I acted for professionally for quite a few years, and I worked at American Conservatory Theater. I did California Shakespeare Festival. I did San Francisco Shakespeare Festival, New Jersey Shakespeare Festival. So I was really steeped in classical theater, loved the language. I've always had this love of language, and I think part of being an English major, you know, uh, gave me that kind of hunger for language. And then I decided that I loved theater, and I had stopped dancing by then. I was doing mostly acting, and I thought I really want to pursue music because I had always loved music. I really didn't do that much musical theaters. I did a few shows. I was in West Side Story, and I was in some other original musicals, but not that much. And I always had a passion for jazz and for jazz standards and jazz singers.
Mm.
So, what did I do? I went back to school again because I love school. I mean, I guess that's why I'm a teacher. And this is while I was teaching. I got hired to teach at Stanford University as an acting teacher through, mutual contacts. First, I went there and worked part time for years, and then eventually they gave me a full time position. So while I'm teaching at Stanford, I'm also taking classes at another community college
Mm.
which is San Francisco Community College, and I took jazz studies, and I loved it so much because I didn't want to be just like another person up there in a black dress, singing things and not knowing anything about the music. So I studied music for 2 years. I had a great teacher. His name was David Hardiman, and I also met a wonderful guitar player, Lenny Carlson, there. So again, it's school really does give you these lifelong contacts. So eventually I thought, again, I'm not going to wait for the phone to ring. I'm going to form my own band. And so I established Black Olive Jazz. Uh, and the Black Olive, obviously, because I'm Greek, that's where
Right,
Black
right,
Olive
right.
came
And I've
from.
gone to your concerts. They're always well attended.
Oh, thank you. Thank
And
you.
you've got
Yeah.
really good musicians in the Bay Area as well.
Yes. Yes. And Michelle, I kept taking classes, and networked. I went to it was called at the time the Jazz School in Berkeley, and now it's called California Jazz Conservatory, I believe. And they had great teachers, and I also connected with other musicians there. And then, eventually I started getting my own gigs, and I wanted to do something unique. I really use a lot of Middle Eastern or Mediterranean elements in my music. I play finger cymbals in my jazz music. They're called zills. I use a lot of Mediterranean and Middle Eastern percussion. It's very, it's like a very danceable groove, and I do standards straight ahead, also swing. So it's a mix of all these things, but again, it's all about self-creation, Michelle, not waiting to be discovered or waiting for somebody else's idea of who you are, to shape you. It's you shaping yourself.
Okay, dear listeners, I hope you are as inspired by Kay as I am. But I wanted to take a pause and check in with you. I was originally going to ask Kay about how she discovered her individual talents for acting and then perhaps singing and dancing, but I didn't have to because she answered all of my questions before I asked them by just describing the natural flow of her life. Each of us is born with a soul purpose and special gifts to fulfill that purpose. But many of us, including myself, forget what some of those abilities are because we weren't supported by our families or our schools or other tribes that we belong to. My calling in this world has been to help people reclaim those parts of themselves that they forgot about and put them back together into the total rock star that they were born to be. In Kay's case, she is very well aware of all of her abilities because she is very loved by her family and had good teachers who saw her gifts. And she demonstrates quite beautifully what it's like to flow with life and take these different superpowers and combine them to create your own, what I call, mashup profession. Now you may be thinking, well, that's nice, but what does all of this have to do with me? Well, everything. You probably have at least one gift that you've forgotten about. And that's why I created this podcast, to help you find it. Most of my guests on this podcast knew their gifts when they were children, and that's why they were able to answer their calling. But my clients weren't aware of their gifts when they first came to work with me. And I can relate because I forgot that I could sing as a child, and I only remembered it later in life. What blocks us? What blocks you? The reason you may not remember your gifts is because you may not have had the same level of love and support from your family and schools as Kay did. I didn't either. We were shamed for our gifts, or they were ignored. You and I buried our gifts in the unconscious so that we could fit in. Kay didn't go through that. Her gifts were readily available to her, as they should have been for you and me had we been brought up in different circumstances. Now, those gifts that you have suppressed are still there. That's the good news. You can still access them, even right now as you're listening to this podcast. And what's cool is once you find those abilities, you can put them together to create something new if you want to, or to put your own slant on something. I did it. I started out as a psychology professor, and then I became a rock star after I discovered I could sing and write songs. After that, I started teaching creativity workshops to help people find their own superpowers. In them, I combined psychology and music to help my clients make breakthroughs more quickly because music stimulates more of the brain than words alone can. I knew that from teaching psychobiology. So you can make your own path just like that. And as you can tell from the way Kay described her life, it happens quite naturally. I didn't think twice about bringing music and psychology together. That's how mashup careers are born. Now you may be thinking, I don't have that many gifts or callings, not like Kay. Well, maybe you don't, but odds are you do have a couple of superpowers. And what I want you to be aware of is that you don't have to keep them separate. So open up your mind to what those gifts and passions may be and allow them to mix together and just see what happens. You don't always have to create something new. Sometimes a mashup career can be work that already exists in the world that you don't know about yet. It just happens to fit your unique combination of abilities and passions. My friend Ron, for example, was a Silicon Valley engineer who also loved to jet ski as a hobby. But after a while, he started to realize that there was some safety issues, and he designed a new part to improve the jet skiing experience. And eventually, he ended up taking his expertise in engineering and his expertise in jet skiing and became an expert witness for people injured in jet skiing accidents. Someone reached out to him to testify in a court case, and voila, a new career was born. Sometimes these occupations are out there just waiting for you to occupy them, but they don't always have to be that big of a change. I know another engineer, Cami, who was always organizing meetings because they were disorganized, and people noticed. And she ended up getting promoted up to product manager, which was not a career she saw for herself, but it ended up being a perfect fit. She took her engineering chops and combined them with her organizational superpowers and got on a different track. Unlike Ron, who left high tech, Cami stayed in it. She rose up the ranks by combining her superpowers. I put psychology in my songs to help listeners overcome obstacles. In fact, the song that opens up this podcast is called Shake It Up, and it's one of the songs that people like the most. I'll put a link for it in the show notes in case you'd like to hear it. And Kay doesn't just do straight up jazz. She brings her Greek heritage into it. She uses Middle Eastern percussion. She makes it her own. And I'll provide links to Kay's music and to an upcoming show she has in New York City on November 16th. The point is, you can do this too with your own gifts and passions. And you don't have to think about it that hard because it will come naturally. Just remember how Kay started out as a drama teacher at Stanford, but then she noticed that engineers and business professionals were taking her acting classes. And now she's brought acting and communication classes into different parts of Stanford, the School of Medicine, the Graduate School of Business, and high-tech companies too. She was following the leads that were naturally unfolding in front of her. That's one of the ways she created herself. What leads are naturally unfolding in front of you? Take a moment to think about it. Make some space in your life to notice. It'll make a difference. Next, Kay is going to talk about how to develop our natural gifts and find the power to succeed in life. Let's go.
And I'm always listening to other people and attending other people's concerts and music because I really feel like, that's where it's at. And the learning never stops. It never stops. So I'm doing this, and I also, continue to teach at Stanford. I still teach at Graduate School of Business, and I still work with, people from all kinds of tech companies and doctors. I do a yearly workshop with Stanford physicians, and it's really about getting people to listen and to be able to express themselves and communicate more clearly. So that's a challenge for a lot of people, especially shy people, or people that are only used to working online, or they're used to just being on their phones and not talking to other people. I really work on effective communication and also humanizing the virtual experience as much as possible.
Yes, and you were doing that with me when I first got on. I'm like, let's get to the podcast. And you said, what? Let's check in with each other. How are you? And I'm like, oh yeah, we're supposed to do that. and I'm pretty good with people, and I'm forgetting because of this virtual
Oh,
living.
oh,
But I am curious. So you, as a girl, you were acting and singing both.
that's right. Learning about, how to, of course, harmonize. And, my family had a lot to do with that too. I learned how to harmonize when I was a little girl.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the harmonies are wonderful. But yeah, I absolutely love all kinds of music too. It isn't just jazz, but that's for me the most freeing genre. It's also, deeply connected feelings and lyrics that you're singing in standards. And the cool thing about jazz is that you're not obligated to one style of doing a song. You can do it as a ballad. You can do it, you can swing it. You can do it like I do, make it more exotic. And it's so wide open. That's why I really loved that. And as much as I love musical theater, I truly do. But I find that jazz is wide open.
Well, one of the things that I've learned talking to a lot of people, and it was true for me, and it's true for everyone I've ever helped find a superpower that they didn't know that they had, was it was accessible to them when they were young.
Uh,
And it sounds to me like you were drawn to acting and to singing when you were a girl, when you were young. That was already there. Yeah,
that's right. Always a performer. Yep. Yep.
performer. And that's interesting too because you have so many different facets to you. But what
Hmm.
you just did, a performer. I just saw what you did there. You took a couple of them and you put them together. You know,
Yeah.
another interesting thing that I think people stumble over is when they do start to figure out their gifts, they think they have to keep them separate.
Oh, no, no, they all lend themselves to one another. I mean, Michelle, creativity is creativity.
Hmm.
I mean, these cross over all the time in my work. I mean, singing is about communication, right? And education, for me, again, was connected to music always. I really learned so much and still attend classes. It doesn't matter how pro I think I am. I cross over back into education, other people educating me. I love being a student because I teach so much. I'm always teaching, and I just love being in the classroom and going, bring it on, teach me something.
Mm,
It's really, really wonderful. And actually, also, I love working with all levels. You're never too good to be in a class. You are never too good. You know, you're going to learn from somebody. You're
mm,
going to learn from somebody, and not just the teacher. You learn from each other
yeah,
always.
yeah.
That's why I go to see everything and everybody. I'm bi-coastal now.
Mm,
Luckily, I live part-time in New York and part-time in San Francisco. I got to New York because Stanford sent me there to teach for a quarter. They have a program there called Stanford in New York. And when I was finished with the quarter in New York, I went, wait a minute, I really love it here. I want to find a way to be here part-time. And I did. I found a way to do it. I found a place to live, and I'm able to go back and forth between the two places, and to participate in music in both places, and to teach in both places. And thank goodness, for virtual teaching, because I can coach from anywhere.
that is so incredible because not only do you have all of these different creative outlets, but you also have different places that you live. Where
Yeah.
that's really inspiring me. I would love to do something like that, honestly.
Um,
Oh my God.
well, come and see me in New York. You're always welcome.
Careful
That
what
would
you
be
offer.
wonderful. That
They
would
put
be
me on
wonderful.
So teaching, what drew you to teaching? So I see the natural inclination for acting and singing and dancing. What about teaching? Was
When I was a kid, I mean, people would ask me what I was going to be. And I think more than even a performer or an actress or a singer, I would say I want to be a teacher. So that was sort of bred in me somehow, that I love, because I just loved school my whole life. I was one of those kids, everybody's like, oh, summer vacation, yay. And I was like, oh, summer vacation. I want to be in school, And I had such great teachers. I really did. I loved I can remember my elementary school teachers, my junior high, my high school teachers. And as I said, I went to all public schools. I did not go to private school, and then my mentors were so beautiful. I had a uh, acting teacher in college, and I told you I didn't really pursue acting in college, but his name is Sergei Chernish. He sent me to American Conservatory Theater, and he was, so so supportive. And my jazz teachers, some of my colleagues, they're just wonderful teachers, and I learned from everybody. I'm never tired of learning.
I'm not either. I actually think of myself as a teacher first too, even though I've done a lot. So I
Yeah,
used to be a professor of psychology, and in the podcast, even this podcast, I'm trying to teach people about how to find their gifts and their calling.
that's
It's teaching.
wonderful.
Thanks. The songs I write have messages in them that are teaching.
Yes, they do.
So I get that teaching angle. And I wanted to say to you, since you have been my teacher, I remember thinking how generous you were, how motivating you were, how you seemed to really click with all different kinds of people. And I remember our classes were filled with Silicon Valley business people.
Right.
Also, I remember, and maybe this is true of acting in general, but one big thing I got from you was that I learned how to land in my body and be in
Yep.
the moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I felt like you did that.
Yeah, I'm so glad I did. And one of the things that I always talk about is getting off yourself. And what I mean by that is getting onto the other person and what are they doing? How do they feel? Because the best actors are the best listeners, you know. The actors that are self-indulgent and self-absorbed are really not that compelling. But the actors that have what we call an objective, and I know you remember that from acting class, some kind of deep desire, and it's always directed at someone else, the other person. And I say that in my class, who's the most important person on stage? The other person. Your scene partner is the most important person. And once you let go of that self-obsession, it becomes much more spontaneous
Yeah,
and interesting, because it's not about you anymore. And if we all did that, I mean, just think, if we were all listening, what a good, better world it might be if we could all be better listeners, right?
oh my God, Kay, that is so true. Absolutely. Well, I mean, again, I'm not an actor, but
You were good in that class.
well,
You certainly were.
thank you. Well, I believe now I think I understand why it landed me in the body, in my body and in the moment, because I was listening to the other person, because I memorized the lines, but then that was done. And now I'm listening to this person talk to me, and I'm reacting to how they are, how they look,
That's exactly
body language
right.
and all of that. So I also wanted to touch a little bit on this, because this is kind of going in that direction, that the article in the Oprah magazine, Oprah Winfrey, it was
Yes.
because it was about body language. It was they had also written about Amy Cuddy, who is I actually have met her before. I have a picture standing in the Wonder Woman pose with her.
Yes.
You know,
Power pose.
yeah, and one of the things I thought was interesting, and I definitely felt it happening in the class with you, so I'd love for you to talk about this. In the article, it says something about humans, I have it in front of me, but humans tend to behave in dominant or deferential ways, and it's
Hmm.
expectations, partly personality, the way we were raised. And you do these warm-up exercises to kind of shake that stuff off. And
That's right.
I would just love to hear more about that, because I think another reason why people get stuck is they think there's have to be a certain way, and that isn't really who they are.
Yeah, it's just the thing, I think, mainly, Michelle, is a kind of a fluidity in dominance and deference. And what I mean by that is it's relative to the situation. So I don't want to be, dominant all the time. I mean, that can be intimidating. Maybe the person that I'm talking to will not react to a dominant delivery.
Mm,
Okay. And I do have a warm up. You know what? I'll send this link to my warm up that I have online to you, and you're welcome to use it or share it in any way.
yeah.
But it's about jumping up and down and shaking out. So what I do is, like, just think about kind of shaking off your own context and letting go of yourself and breathing, closing your eyes, grounding, and focusing on the breath. So that's the first thing, to just focus on the breathing and to loosen up the body, shake up the voice a little bit so that the diaphragm can be released and the voice can drop down into your diaphragm.
Mhm.
And then again, getting off yourself and noticing what's going on with the other person and how you're being received. So, dominant doesn't have to, the other misconception is dominant doesn't have to be mean. High power doesn't mean you're mean at all.
Yeah.
It can be extremely generous to be open and powerful. High power does not mean meanness. Okay, you might want to do something like just trying one little behavior, like maybe lowering your pitch. Speaking in a lower pitch. And I also always say, I'm not trying to make you sound like a guy if you're a woman. You are who you are, but you have 3 octaves available to you. And maybe a different pitch, one down here versus one up here, might make a difference in how you're being perceived. And I also say, I'm not trying to make you phony in any way. I'm looking for the authentic you and your own voice. It's all your voice. Who else's voice is it? It's
Yeah.
just a different part of your voice that you haven't used, lifting the sternum, lifting the chest a few inches, makes an enormous difference in a powerful presence. Just little things like that, expanding the body, taking up space, eye contact. And it, again, that depends on the situation and the culture. Maybe direct eye contact is not cool in your particular culture. We're universal now. We're not just stuck in our own little country or world. We are looking at all kinds of cultures and all kinds of behaviors. So that's why it's important, again, to perceive how you are being taken in.
Right.
It's not all about you. It's how the other person is perceiving you. And you might want to adjust your power and your dominance or deference based on the message that you're getting back from whoever you're talking to.
So that requires listening, paying attention to what's happening, and
Yep.
also being able to access a lot of who you are, like your different ways you hold your body, the different pitches of your voice. Like I had a hard childhood. It was a hard upbringing. So I, for many, many, many years, held myself small. Maybe in a scary situation where you don't want anybody to pick on you, maybe that works. But and don't want to walk through the world being like that. A nice message that comes to me from all of that you're saying is we are more than the groove that we think that we've always been living in. We've got more options in front of us. And
Absolutely.
because a lot of people I work with, they don't know who they are. They don't know, and
Yeah.
I don't blame them because there's so many messages from society and the crazy world that we live in,
Oh,
and
yes.
they might not fit in with who, what their parents wanted them to be or what their society wanted them to be. But
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. We're all different, and we all have to honor that. And then maybe it's time to move forward. It might be time to move forward and at your own pace. There's nothing absolute about it. It's taking these little steps to expand your range. I think about, increasing my range, expanding your range in any art, in any kind of work, staying open to new ideas. And yeah, listening, absolutely. Listening is so, so important.
yeah, absolutely. I remember too, in one of the classes I took from you, I got a role of a character who was a real badass, and I had to be a badass. I'm like, can I do that? Don't I? Aren't I supposed to play small? And I could do it. I could do it. And
Of
it's
course you could.
you've got options about who you are in the world.
Sure. That's the fun of acting, I mean, I love playing villains and mean people because, that's really not in my nature. And I'm a natural smiler. And sometimes I had to train myself as an instructor when I was getting resistance to not smile so much, because it's my natural instinct to always be positive and smiling. And there were times when it wasn't like I had to be mean,
Yeah,
but I just had to take a breath and settle into myself and try not smiling for a change and see what effect that would have, you know, on people. Because, that's like I said, I just have a sunny disposition most of the time,
yeah,
but you can't always be that way, especially if you are getting messages from someone else and they're not hearing you,
yeah,
and they're challenging you.
yeah.
So yeah, that's always been, my greatest effort is maintaining this composure and steady, unwavering, seriousness, right? But sometimes when I need to use it, I know where to find it and when to pull it out.
Yeah, yeah. And my lesson is learning to take up space, which is one of the reasons why I really enjoyed the O Magazine article, and because it's owning your power, you know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask like one last question. If you have any advice for listeners who are trying to find their gifts or find enough confidence to use their gifts, any advice for 'em?
Yes. I think again, who do you really admire?
Mm.
Watch what they're doing and what is it about them? Can you define it? And if, say, you're a singer, listen to different styles. I have a great singing teacher. Her name's Greta Matassa, and she'll listen to, Barbara Streisand and Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald, and she'll sing along with them and think, now, where's that voice coming from? And imitate them, and have fun with that, and that helps her to find her own voice. Also, I always say study, go out and learn. There's so many great classes online, in person. What's your area of interest? It's you're never too old or too good to learn something. And finally, create your own work. You have, an ability to videotape yourself. You have the ability to audio tape yourself for free. You don't have to be in a studio. You do it all yourself, put it on a little, stand and talk into it or sing into it, memorize a Shakespeare monologue or read from a good book. If you want to be an actor, there are so many ways to practice, so many ways to practice.
One of the things I really get from you that I haven't gotten from other people as much that I've interviewed, and they've all been great, is the idea of creating your life.
Hmm.
That's a possibility.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yep. I mean, Michelle, like I said, I didn't come from an affluent, scholarly background at all. But I was surrounded by love and they were talented. It's not like they weren't, but, it was, they were survivors out
Mhm,
of the Depression. So
mhm.
there wasn't a lot of time for fooling around with the arts in my house,
Yeah.
but they supported me and everything I wanted to do. They were like, "Oh, you want to be a belly dancer? Yeah, great." And believe me, a lot of Greek families would not have gone for that. My family loved it. They loved it. Everything I did. So I had that kind of support. And if you don't have that kind of support, then you've got to get it from within.
Dear listeners, I really loved this interview with Kay. She not only created her own life, but she deeply supports other people in creating theirs. And what she said at the very end about loving yourself is an important key to becoming the total rock star you were born to be. So, how does a person do that? It made me think back to how I met Kay in the first place. I decided to give myself a birthday present a few years ago. I bought myself an acting class. I knew nothing about it. All I knew is that everything I ever did turned into a profession and I had no hobbies. And I really just wanted to do something for me, for my own joy. That was very out of character for me. And because I did that, I got to meet Kay. And little did I know that I would get to know her better and better over the years. And we had so much in common, the love of teaching, the love of music. I gave myself a gift. As I mentioned before, I was brought up in a difficult home environment. I felt very lonely and unsupported, and I made a simple move to support myself by giving myself that gift. So, how can you love yourself if you were also brought up in a not supportive home or a traumatic environment like me? Well, honestly, make any kind of gesture towards yourself of love, of self compassion. It all counts. I just love synchronicity. And you know what's really interesting? As I was editing this podcast with Kay, I listened to an interview with Bessel van der Kolk. He is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. In the last part of the book, he lists some of the different ways that you can overcome trauma. And do you know what one of those ways is? Take an acting class. He says that playing powerful roles in theater productions helps people overcome trauma because they get to see what that feels like, and it rewires the brain. So little did I know that when I was playing that badass character so many years ago in Kay's class, it was already starting to rewire my brain. Giving myself that present was unusual because I didn't know how to take care of myself. But I look back now and I realize it was an act of self-love because I was trying to nurture myself. So I know it can be really hard to ask yourself, well, how do I love myself, or how do I find love within if you don't love yourself right now? I know what that feels like. Believe me, I've been there. How about thinking of it this way? What small thing can you do for yourself today? Listening to this podcast is a step in the right direction. It shows yourself compassion and kindness and curiosity. Like Kay said, start out with small ways to expand yourself. And to show yourself more love, you can do things like take breaks from work, get a massage, listen to your favorite music. I love lighting cranberry-scented tea candles. You can take a yoga class. You can take an acting class like I did with Kay, and that led me to go to her jazz performances, which also brought me joy. Speaking of which, Kay has a show in New York City with Black Olive Jazz on November 16th at Pangea Cabaret in the East Village at 7 p.m. I've put a link for it in the show notes, and I also have links to Kay's work. Thank you so much, Kay, for sharing your wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to Your True Calling. Please leave a review and share it with your friends. From my website, yourtruecalling.org, you can follow me on social media, learn more about my music and my coaching, contact me to find your superpowers live on the air, and help me produce future episodes by funding me on Patreon.